The water's cool, but the bite's about to heat up. Here's the best early spring catfishing tips to help you succeed. If you're looking to catch big catfish from the bank this spring, you've come to the right place. Finding the right spot and time of day to fish for catfish in early spring can really make or break your trip. So here are the most important things you're going to need to know. The best locations for early spring bank fishing are in sunny and shallow areas. As the sun warms the water, catfish will move in closer to feed. And of course, fishing near submerged structure is always key. Around sunken logs, fallen trees, large rock piles, and thick brush piles. All great places to provide cover and find bait fish activity. Structure will absorb the sun's heat and thus be warmer places for catfish to hide. And around creek inflows where fresh water carries in food and always attracts catfish. And the best times to fish in spring when the water is still cold and catfish are a little bit sluggish, we want to target late afternoon to early evening because when the water warms up, the cats will be slightly more aggressive feeding. And after a warm spring rain is also another good time to fish because this will wash food into the shallows and naturally increase their feeding activity. In general, fishing during stable weather always makes most sense, being sure to avoid drastic cold fronts when they slow down their bite. You can check online water temperatures where you'll be fishing, and when they warm up and become more active, that's when you go. Hey, now's a great time to like this video and share it with your fellow angler friends. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community of passionate fishermen and stay updated with all of our daily posts. Now let's talk about the really fun stuff. What baits we're going to use in early spring to catch catfish consistently. We all know that catfish are opportunistic feeders and bottom scavengers, but in early spring, they can still be a bit sluggish coming out of their winter slumber, if you will. So the way to catch more catfish right now is to use baits that are very stinky and smelly, fresh, and full of natural fats and oils that will inherently trigger catfish to bite every time. There are, of course, more than one way to skin a cat per se, but here are our favorite early spring cold water catfish baits that have been proven to work for us year in and year out. First is good old chicken liver, a classic bait year-round, especially for channels and bullheads because of the strong smell, smooth texture, and loads of protein and fat that really work great in cold water and warming weather. And just as good as liver is using fresh cut bait. Freshly cut bluegill, shad, or skipjack are consistent choices because they release a very strong scent trail once the insides get pushed through the water. Just make sure using cut up chunks of bait is legal where you live first. And live night crawlers are another great bait to catch catfish this time of the year. It's a killer bait for channels, especially in spring after warm spring rains that we talked about. Just hook 2 or 3 big worms through your octopus circle hook. The scent, flavor, wiggle, and movement always drives catfish crazy when they're fished right on the bottom. And we can't leave off dip baits and punch baits in early spring either. They're especially effective in muddy water in spring because of their specially formulated pungent odor and scent that will attract catfish in from up to about 100 yards away. And lastly, another pro tip, if you're still fishing in very cold water, is to use smaller chunks of all these baits to make it easier for sluggish cats to grab onto. Once the water begins to warm up, you can certainly go with larger pieces once the full bite is on. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about how catfish behave in early spring, because the more we can think like a catfish, the more fish we're likely going to catch. As the water begins to start warming up from the winter lows, catfish will become more active, but they aren't quite fully in their spring feeding frenzy yet, like bass and crappie might be around now. Once the water temperatures get into the 45 to 55 degree Fahrenheit range, this is the sweet spot for catfish and most all other fish to move from their deep wintering holes towards shallower water where bait fish and other food sources will become more available. So here are the most prominent areas to target to find them. Focus on muddy flats near deeper water and shallow coves that warm up faster with the sun beaming down, and creek mouths where fresh water brings in various nutrients that catfish are always after. And another great spot year-round, especially early spring, are rocky banks that also absorb heat and thus attract bait fish. The real key in spring is to find these types of transition zones where catfish will stage up in between deeper and shallower water. And always remember in spring to fish the northern end of the lake first, as that will always warm up the fastest. Okay, now that we've covered where to find spring catfish and what to feed them, let's now focus on the best rigs we need to be using when bank fishing. You'll need to have the right setup to get your baits precisely into the strike zone and right in front of them. So here are our go-to rigs for early spring catfishing. First up is the common and simple slip sinker rig, which is great for fishing deeper channels and lakes and for transitioning fish. It's just a simple egg sinker swivel and either your main line or a leader with your octopus circle hook tied to it with a good strong uni knot. Next is a Santee Cooper rig, which is just a slip sinker rig, except we add a peg float to lift the bait just off the bottom, usually 6 or 8 inches up from your circle hook, and this setup is particularly effective when you have a very rocky or heavily tangled weedy bottom that's prone to consistent snags. And finally is the float rig, where you can use a fixed stick bobber or a slip bobber to keep your bait right on or just near the bottom and in the targeted strike zone. And for the best gear, we use a 3/0 to 5/0 octopus circle hook for channels and bullheads, and a bigger 7/0 to 8/0 for flatheads and blues. And we always use 50-pound braided line because we also catch huge snapping turtles on the bottom when we're catfishing. Okay, let's wrap up with some great bonus tips and extra fishing hacks that will help you land more cats this spring, hands down better than the fisherman that's not watching this video. First, make sure you're casting out multiple rods at different depths and with different baits on each until you see what's actually working best that day. And if legal to do so, chum the water first where you'll be fishing with some cut bait scraps or wet dog food or the oil from your tuna fish cans to draw in fish right away. And make sure you've got each rod securely snug into your rod holders because catfish are very strong, can literally pull a rod right into the drink and it's lost forever. I've seen it happen to experienced catfishermen all the time. Don't let it happen to you, folks. Tight lines. We'll see you out on the water this spring. Okay, folks, thanks for watching. Please like this video, hit the subscribe button before you leave, and don't forget to enable your bell notifications so you never miss another great video coming your way.